When it comes to trilogies, one of my all-time favorites is the Dark Knight saga. I can list off all the different reasons why, because it's an effective character study, because it has really amazing sequences, because it actually sticks to a solid 3-movie story arc. Each of the films brings something different, and is the perfect example of doing a superhero film right. Christopher Nolan had a clear vision, bringing a different interpretation of Batman to the screen. In all the previous films, we got doses of humor and dark action, as well as animation. Some of the movies were great, and some were downright terrible. After the failure of Batman and Robin, it made sense to go in a direction that was more serious in tone, and Nolan also brought a realism never seen in a comic book film ever before. You could truly believe Batman is a real character. Of course, this series was always less about Batman beating up bad guys and more about Bruce Wayne and his evolution as a person, because in the end, that's what makes a character so interesting. His past is so traumatic and sad, and was in desperate need of being developed, something that only Batman Forever and Mask of the Phantasm had attempted. In this summer series, I will be celebrating the 10th anniversary of one of my favorite films, The Dark Knight, and will be analyzing aspects of this amazing trilogy. Batman Begins immediately introduces you to Bruce Wayne. It tells you that this will be about the development of his persona rather than the conflicts of saving the day. Bruce Wayne is a rich boy, probably given everything he wants and never having to put an actual hard day's work in. In essence, he's exactly the kind of person to hate. He hasn't been where the lower classes have been, and he doesn't understand what it's like to hit rock bottom. However, he doesn't share the characteristics of being shallow or a spoiled kid, because that's the point. He's still a developing child. Children are constantly processing information at a young age, and this film perfectly defines how experience and people can impact who you are. His friendship with Rachel, someone who's not in the same position, is an outside connection. It's his way to relate to those who have less than him, which helps him learn from an early age the power he has to do good. His parents, while briefly in the film, are helpful, well-mannered souls who give Bruce good words of advice and trust him in the hands of his only other caretaker, Alfred, another connection to the outside world. His parents are shown to constantly expose their child to the responsibility of power and being humble. They not only build infrastructure to help those in need, but they even participate by doing things like joining the lower class in public transportation. They don't take a limo to the opera, they show that they're willing not only to give a hand to those below them, but even join them. Not many stories take the opposite approach of the coming from nothing plotline. Another good example is Creed, where the character tries to define themselves beyond the lucky resources they have to achieve anything they want. Like Adonis Creed, Bruce Wayne has the trouble of being a famous icon who needs to develop himself in order to be taken seriously and make a change, rather than having the rebuke of negative criticism because of the privilege. His parents' good-natured approach is challenged when they're murdered by the very person they're trying to help, and Bruce is challenged to look at the situation as seeking revenge for himself. He doesn't immediately become an idealist or a hero. He falls to the temptation of taking matters into his own hands, but only for his hands. It's only when someone beats him to the punch that he truly feels lost. After years of being pushed in one ideological direction, one that leads to a form of so-called justice, his chance of being a so-called hero is taken from him. He can no longer follow this destiny, and it's at this moment where he becomes empty. It takes his connection to Rachel for him to realize that his father and younger self were never meant to build towards this persona. He was not meant to avenge his father, but to realize that the situation is neither the murderer's or Bruce's fault. It's the fault of the system. Without that traumatic event, Bruce maybe would have never became who he's meant to be, and others in his position would fall victim to laziness or revenge. But instead, Bruce decides he must find a way to do what is right no matter what. As Joseph Campbell said in The Hero with a Thousand Faces, perhaps some of us have to go through the dark and devious ways before we can find the river of peace or the high road to the soul's destination. There's also many themes of fear throughout the film. Fear drives people to either act or be scared. Fear can cause random emotions and changes. Fear helps make an ideology. For Bruce, his fear of bats has always been more symbolic of the fear of trauma, which is stirred up after realizing he has too many relationships at stake if he decides to take a stand like his parents did.
I'm not afraid of you.
Because you think you got nothing to lose.
But you haven't thought it through. You haven't thought about your lady friend down in the DA's office. You haven't thought about your old butler. Bang!
Batman needs to be created in order for him to succeed, and the fear of continued chaos drives him to be his better self. In essence, he removes the blame of the past from himself and puts it on fear. Batman uses fear to drive the citizens to do better, while others, like Scarecrow, who have the same resources and brains like Batman, continue to use fear for the betterment of themselves. Batman's resources and technology can also relate to the faith versus science argument, where Bruce finds a middle ground. Instead of relying on one or the other, he uses both. The ideology is constantly changing as Batman evolves, and Bruce himself is never too conscious of every decision he makes. As Roger Ebert put it, Wayne himself is a slow learner, clumsy at times, taking foolish chances, inventing Batman as he goes along. When creating an ideology, the most important factors are the people surrounding you, your parents, your friends, and your idols. When Bruce finds a mentor, he believes he's finally found a way to pursue the course towards true justice, only to find out his mentor has a significant flaw, something which Bruce will not stoop to. This could be a highly contested piece of the film, where Bruce and Ra's al Ghul have nearly identical backstories and motivations, but because of Bruce's past and his relationships, he can't succumb to bringing justice through the means of destruction, while others may find this to be the most logical solution. Bruce finds that in order for true change to happen, you need to push the people to do better in the form of a symbol, much like how he was pushed by others to do good. Oftentimes, I think it's hard for us to see past our mentor's fault. We become carbon copies of the people who influence ourselves without ever questioning our own sensibilities. As a species, we have to improve over those who came before us. We need to see through the mistakes and fix ourselves. Bruce masters this by changing from a man who blames himself for the murders of his parents to becoming a man who fights corruption in his own way.
It's a symbol that can be incorruptible, that can be everlasting.
Instead of falling to a system of repeated failure, he instead demands change with the same humility and sacrifice that his parents had, while also improving upon their methods and the ideals of his mentors. He let his Batman persona define what it means to make the world a better place, because people often use symbols or metaphors to dictate their lives. Batman represents an ideology of change, justice, and the belief that things can and must get better. Batman is influential not because of his colorful enemies or awesome tools. Batman Begins realism sends a wake-up call to the audience, letting them know that it's possible for one person to alter the future for good or bad. And Batman represents the resistance to standing by and letting the past slow down progress. Batman is about using privilege to improve the lives of others. Batman is the need to never give up and do the right thing, no matter the trials or tribulations. You can't give up.
Why do we force? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Thanks for watching the video. A special thanks to Ryan for supporting me on Patreon. If you'd like to join him and get early access to certain videos and have your name stamped on the end of videos and even request reviews monthly, then please click on the Patreon link, and thanks for the support.